bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous.
Good
Continuez
morning,
de rentrer,
everyone.
continuez de
Continue
prendre
to
place. Nous allons
enter
tenter
the
un rendez-vous en
room
direct,
and have a
en direct
seat.
là chez vous,
We
où nous
are
sommes.
here to meet with you
Suivez si vous
directly.
voulez,
You can
je vous
follow
regarde.
us
Alors, je
at
m'appelle
the
Éloi
place of
Cheplin,
your
je suis la
choice.
co-transmission
My
comme actif
name is
animateur de cette
Elwa
journée. Je vais essayer de
Chapla. I
faciliter les
am
échanges.
the
Puis Éloi
moderator for the
essaye
day.
de
I'm
bien
here to
comprendre déjà
facilitate
de quoi
things.
il va en
I'm
retourner
going
dans
to
notre
try to
conversation. Le
understand
mot
exactly
conversation est un mot très
what we
important
are
parce
talking
que c'est une
about here
conversation qu'on va avoir
in this
tous ensemble,
conversation
avec
because
vous,
this
avec
conversation
vous en ligne,
is
et puis
important. It's
avec
something
vos
we're
invités,
going
bien
to share
sûr,
with
toute la journée.
you here, you
Alors,
online,
vous
and
savez,
with
j'ai
our
aussi le
guests.
rôle un
As
peu
you know,
agaçant, celui qui est
I
un petit peu
also
obnubilé par
have
l'horloge,
the
celui qui
aggravating
regarde beaucoup
role who
l'écran
has
ici, l'écran
of
là.
the clock
Il y a un chrono
watcher.
sur cet écran, il y a des
And
images
there
qu'il y
is
a
a
sur un
clock
chrono,
on the
toujours
slide
pour
here.
nous rappeler que
All of this to
voilà, c'est le
remind
temps qui
us
court,
that
court, mais c'est
time is
celui-là qui nous rend si
advancing,
sérieux.
and
Et
with
je suis
this
très
is what
content parce que
makes us
c'était un
so
effort pour démarrer
serious
le
here.
premier Refashion. Je
I'm
peux dire
very
que j'ai
happy
fait
because I
ce
must
check.
say that
Juste un
I
petit mot.
must
Le téléphone.
observe the clock.
Bon, le
Telephones, one
téléphone, on
word.
sait plus.
Well,
Sortez le
telephones,
téléphone,
please take your
gardez-le,
phones
gardez-le
out,
surtout allumé. Je
keep
ne sais
it
pas si
with
vous
you,
capterez de toute manière, mais
keep
vous
it
avez
on,
des accès
but
Wi-Fi.
you
Et
have
surtout en France, je
Wi-Fi
préfère que je vérifie sur les
access,
voisins
and
tout ce que
we
vous
want
entendez
you
sur les
to
réseaux sociaux.
share
C'est pour ça que vous
everything you
sortez, donc
hear
évitez
and
juste
see with
de
the
vous laisser
social media network.
sonner. Ce serait toujours un petit peu
And
déplaisant pour vos
what
voisins.
would be good though
Voilà, je
is that
crois que
you
j'ai fini avec
turn
mes premiers
the
messages de service. Je vous
sound
propose
off.
d'accueillir tous
So
ensemble
I
Maud Hardy,
suggest
directrice
we
générale de Refashion, pour lancer les
invite
travaux.
Maud Hardy on stage, the Director General of Refashion. So give her a warm round of applause.
Bonjour Maud.
Good morning, Maud.
Ça va très bien et toi?
How are you? Very well, thank
Hello,
you.
hello, bonjour à tous.
Good morning.
Hello, hello. Oh là là, des
Good
millions de
morning.
personnes. Merci,
Oh,
merci
thousands
d'être
of
là aujourd'hui
people.
avec nous.
Happy to see all of you here with
Alors, nous
us.
sommes ravis,
So we're
vraiment ravis
delighted,
de
really
vous accueillir
delighted to have you
aujourd'hui
here
pour la
with
quatrième
us this
édition du
morning for
Refashion Day,
the
ce rendez-vous
fourth
annuel de la
edition of
cyberculture
Refashion Day,
associée.
which is the
Ici à Paris
annual
et
meeting
là-bas,
of
à
the
New York, à
CHF.
Delhi,
Here
à
in Paris,
Brive-la-Gaillarde.
in New
Vous
York,
êtes
in
plusieurs centaines de
Brive-la-Gaillarde,
millions,
in
bon
Delhi.
allez, soyons modestes,
Let's be
soyons
honest
honnêtes,
here, not
à nous
millions,
suivre
but
en live
I know there
aujourd'hui.
are
Et on
thousands
va passer
following
une
us
journée
online
formidable. Pour faire
live.
le programme de cette
So we're
journée,
going
nous
to
nous
have
sommes
an
inspirés
excellent
d'un
day
film,
to
Don't
prepare
Look Up.
today's
Vous connaissez
program.
ce
We
film
have,
super
in fact,
avec Leonardo
looked
DiCaprio
a
et
film
Jennifer Lawrence.
with
Ce film qui
Jennifer
raconte
Lawrence
le
and
déni collectif.
Leonardo da Vinci,
Aujourd'hui, tous ensemble,
which
on aimerait
is
adopter
a
la posture
general
inverse.
collective
Look up.
denial. And so today,
Regardons
in
en
fact,
face
we want
nos
to
enjeux.
look up,
Quels sont les défis
we
de la
want to look at
cyberculture
our
associée au
challenges.
niveau
What are the
mondial? Quelles sont
challenges
nos
of
grandes
the
problématiques et comment
CHF
ensemble
sector
on peut
worldwide?
contribuer
What are
à
our
inscrire cette
problems?
filière dans une vraie
Well, how
transition
together we
environnementale.
can contribute to a
La
real
transition environnementale
change
de la
and a
filière, c'est un projet
environmental
collectif, c'est un
transition.
mouvement
The
inclusif.
environmental
On doit tous y
transition
contribuer et tous
is
y
a
participer.
collective goal for
Notre
all of us. We
objectif
must
aujourd'hui,
all
c'est de dessiner une
participate.
mode
Our
plus
objective
durable,
today is to
respectueuse de son
design a
environnement et de ses
fashion which
ressources.
is more sustainable,
Depuis quelques
more
mois, vous en avez
respectful
sans
of
doute
the
entendu parler.
environment.
Nos
For
acteurs de la
several
collecte,
months now, I
nos
think you
acteurs
have
du
all
tri,
have heard
vivent des
spoken
moments particulièrement
speak of
difficiles.
the
Une crise
actors in the
internationale
collection. You know,
impacte
there
de façon
is
durable et
an
probablement
international
structurelle
crisis
notre
which is
filière. Le modèle
impacting
actuel
in
est
a
en question.
sustainable and
Il va
lasting
falloir
way
le réinventer.
our
Il va
sector.
falloir
We're
collectivement
going to
le
have
faire
to
évoluer. Quelles sont
reinvent
les pistes de progrès?
the
Quelles sont les
sector,
pistes à
have it
éclairer?
evolve.
Comment
What
est-ce
are
qu'on va
the
réussir
possible
à boucler la
avenues of
boucle de
change?
l'économie circulaire?
How are we going to
Aujourd'hui,
loop
on
the
va parler
loop of the
pédagogie.
circular
On va parler
economy?
partage de
Today, we're
connaissances,
going to talk
partage de points de vue,
education,
intégration de tous
pedagogy,
les modèles,
the sharing
appel à
of
la
our
coopération.
knowledge, integration
C'est
of
le
all models,
programme que nous vous
and a call
proposons
for
et c'est le programme
cooperation.
qu'Éloi va
This
vous
is the
présenter.
C'est une
program
sacrée
that
journée,
we are
effectivement, qui
proposing that's
s'annonce,
going to
un
be
sacré programme. Et
proposed
juste avant
by
de démarrer, est-ce
Eloi.
qu'on peut
Yes,
parler de
it's going to be a
Thalès?
On doit
On doit
significant
parler de
parler de Thalès,
Thalès.
oui,
Est-ce que
effectivement.
tout
program.
le monde la reconnaît?
So, how are we
Oui, plus fort.
going
Est-ce que tout le monde
to,
la reconnaît?
is everyone
Ouais.
Bon, mais cela dit, j'aimerais bien que tu
recognize,
m'expliques.
Ok,
in
bon d'accord.
fact,
Alors
what
cette
we're
veste, en
talking
fait,
about
c'est
today?
l'œuvre
Your
collective
vest. The
de tout
vest
un tas
here
d'acteurs sur le
is a
territoire national. Et je
collective
fais un petit
work
coucou à
by
Victoire
all
Sato de Good
actors
News.
at the
Salut
international
Victoire.
level.
Elle est
Hello,
là.
here,
Cette
there's
veste,
Victoire.
en fait, elle
This
illustre
vest
les différentes
illustrates
bandes
the
du réchauffement
different
climatique. Sur à peu
bands
près
of
100 ans,
climate change.
ici, on voit les
100 years
températures
ago,
du
you
début
see
du
the
siècle,
temperatures
plutôt
at the
bleues,
beginning of
parce qu'elles sont inférieures
the century, which were
à la moyenne.
rather
Et
blue,
ici,
under the
les 20
average.
dernières
On
années,
this
plutôt vers
side,
le rouge,
you
puisqu'elles
see
indiquent le
the
réchauffement
recent
climatique et
values,
les températures
red,
qui augmentent
because
et
it
qui sont
shows
au-delà
climate
des
change and
moyennes.
temperatures which
Et
are
donc là, c'est un vrai
increasing
risque
above
si
the
on va plutôt
average.
vers
So
là. Et si on
this is a
continue
real
à aller
risk.
vers le
If we
rouge,
continue
les
going
températures
towards the
moyennes
red,
sont
the
au-delà,
average
au-delà de
temperatures
la moyenne.
are
Bon,
going to be
espérons que la veste que
way
tu auras
above
l'an
the
prochain ne
average.
soit
Well,
pas
I
de
hope
plus en plus
that
rouge, évidemment.
your vest next
Merci
year will
beaucoup,
have no
Maudardy.
Merci
red.
à toi.
Merci.
Thank
À
you,
tout
Maud
bientôt.
Hardy.
Et on
Thank
retrouve
you.
Maud
And
tout à
we
l'heure.
will talk with Maud later on
Alors, on l'a vu,
today.
cette journée est une
We
journée
saw
importante
that
d'échange, d'écoute, de
today is an
dialogue, de
important day
conversation.
of
Elle va
of
être très
exchange
dense.
and
Je voulais
dialogue,
juste vous expliquer les grandes règles de la
conversation. It's going
journée.
to be very dense.
Alors d'abord,
So
qu'il
let
soit
me
clair,
explain the rules for the day.
on va
First,
co-construire cette journée.
everything must
Mais
be
ça, c'est
clear.
un
We're
mot,
going
peut-être
to
valise, un mot que vous
construct
entendez
this
souvent,
day
mais c'est
together.
vrai. Mais juste une petite
Co-construction is something
précision.
you
Vous,
hear a lot
ici, au
about, but
Cercle
let me
Domal,
say
à Paris,
something.
vous
We
avez un
all
petit
know
bonus, c'est que
that
vous êtes là.
here in
Vous êtes là
Paris,
physiquement, vous êtes
you
là
have
assis,
the advantage of
et
being
tout le monde n'a
physically
pas pu rentrer.
present.
Donc vous, par
And
exemple, vous
everyone has
allez, votre
entered
bonus, c'est de
the room.
pouvoir
So
discuter
your
avec les
bonus
intervenants
is
tout au
that
long de la
you can
journée.
speak
C'est de
directly
pouvoir déambuler
with
dans les
the
différents
speakers
salons, les
today.
différents
You
corners.
can
Vous
walk
allez
through
pouvoir
the
parler à
different
toute l'équipe Refashion.
rooms, the different corners,
Ça, c'est
talk
votre
with the
bonus à vous.
Refashion team members.
Vous, en ligne,
That is the
d'où vous nous
bonus for
regardez,
you.
d'où bon
For
vous sommes,
you
vous
online,
avez aussi un
wherever you
bonus.
might be,
Vous
you have
pourrez
a
poser des
bonus as
questions sur
well.
le chat, sur
You can
l'onglet chat.
ask
Vous voyez où vous êtes.
questions on the chat
Vous avez
from
un
where
onglet
you
chat où vous
are.
pouvez poser toutes
You
vos questions.
have
Tiens, je vous
a
propose de
chat
l'utiliser
and you
d'ailleurs
can
cet
ask
onglet.
all questions. You
Dites-nous
have a
la
tab
ville dans laquelle vous
chat.
êtes,
For
la pièce
example,
peut-être
use
aussi
it
dans laquelle
now.
vous êtes.
Tell
Hein,
me
on peut
what
être
city
surpris qui
you
c'est.
find yourself in,
Vous nous
what
dites,
room
vous nous
you're
dites dans le
in.
chat et
So
vous
tell
l'expliquez.
us
C'est donc
in the
là
chat
où
where you
régulièrement
are.
dans la
And
journée,
so
vous pourrez
during the
poser des
day,
questions à tous les
throughout the
intervenants.
day, you
Vous
will
allez
be
dire qu'en
able
plus
to
c'est une
ask
sorte de bonus.
questions
Hein. C'est un
of all
double
the
bonus. Vous,
speakers.
vous
So you
avez
see,
beaucoup de bonus
there's
et
a
vous avez
twofold
un
bonus.
bonus
Those in the room
important de
have a lot
poser
of
des questions
bonuses,
aux
but those
intervenants.
online have the
Donc
possibility
voilà, alors
of
que
asking
vos questions, bien
questions of
sûr,
the
elles vont
speakers.
arriver nombreuses.
And
On va
your
pas pouvoir
questions, I'm sure, will
tout poser,
come in
mais
great
rien ne sera
numbers.
rejeté, tout
We're
sera
not going
évidemment
to be able to
recyclé,
ask all
retraité.
of them, but all of the
On va
questions will
également
be
vous poser des
processed
petites questions
and
régulièrement, des petits
dealt with.
sondages. Ça sera dans l'onglet interactivité.
We will
Vous,
also have some
vous, ça sera main
questions
levée.
for you,
Ça vous
little
va? C'est pas mal.
surveys
Bon,
in the tab
prévenez quand même vos voisins
interaction.
avant.
And so
Je rappelle juste si j'ai parlé
I'd
tout à
like
l'heure du
to
téléphone
remind
et
you
des réseaux
here
sociaux.
that I
Alors
asked you to turn the
vous avez un
phones off,
super pouvoir quand même.
not
Hein.
off,
Vous
but
avez
turn the
celui de
sound off.
propulser un petit peu
You
la
have
convergence,
the
un
social
petit
media
peu
network, so you
de
have the
complexité aussi
opportunity
dans un monde
of
qui en manque un peu tant,
projecting
le
that
monde des réseaux sociaux.
intelligence and
Donc ça, c'est
complexity
votre super
in the
pouvoir.
world of the social
Alors voilà,
media.
Charlieu, Lille, Rouen,
So
Orléans.
you
Bon, on
know, in
voit que
Charleroi,
Sao
Lille,
Paulo, New
Orléans,
York
etc.,
sont un
Sao
petit peu endormis,
Paulo,
mais ça
New
va pas
York.
tarder.
Some people are not yet awake, but they will
Votre super
be
pouvoir, donc,
soon.
c'est de
So
élargir
your
un petit peu les murs de
superpower
ce cercle
is
domal, qui
to
sont des gros murs. Je ne
extend
capterai
the
pas
walls,
forcément
push
beaucoup,
back the walls
mais essayez quand même
of
d'élargir,
this
et sinon, vous
group,
comptez tout à l'heure dans les moments de pause,
extend the
et
number
vous
of people who
mettez un
are
peu
aware
d'intelligence sur les
of
réseaux
what we're
sociaux,
doing.
s'il vous plaît.
Get some
Merci beaucoup.
intelligence on the
Le
social
menu de
media
cette journée,
network.
alors,
Share
on
your
l'a vu,
intelligence with
tout
them.
look-up, Maud
The
en a parlé.
day's
On va
menu,
d'abord
well,
s'intéresser à
we
la
saw
la
lookup.
collecte de
We're
demain.
going to look
Ensuite,
at
on va se
the
poser pas mal de questions sur
collection of
la fin
tomorrow.
des vêtements qui doit être un
We're
petit peu plus
going to talk
responsable.
a question
Et puis
about
cet
the
après-midi,
end
on va
of
parler d'un
life of
projet parmi les
clothing,
plus
which
audacieux
has to be
jamais
more
réalisés.
responsible.
On va
And then we're
parler
going
de
to talk
l'Europe,
about one
bien sûr.
of
Et
the
tout au long de la
most
journée, on va évidemment
audacious
parler de
projects
coopération, parce que
raised,
finalement, il
and
n'y
we're
a
going to talk of
qu'ensemble
Europe,
qu'on
and
peut
we're
faire
going to
face,
talk of
il n'y a qu'ensemble
cooperation,
qu'on peut agir.
because it is only together
Bon,
that we can
alors, c'est
act.
parti pour cette journée. Ça
So
y est,
we're
là, je suis
going to
obnubilé par le
start
temps. Je
this
vois
day.
chrono qui défile, mais c'est
I'm
parfait. Nous
totally
sommes
obsessed
dans les
by
temps, c'est la
time.
bonne
We
nouvelle.
are
Et
on
on a la
time, which
chance
is good
d'amorcer
news.
les premiers
We're
questionnements, les premiers
very
débats, les
lucky
travaux,
we can
avec une
start the
première
first
conversation
questions,
avec
the first
Isabelle Kocher de
discussion
l'Héritz,
with
fondatrice
Isabelle
du cabinet Blue Lobby et
Kocher de
ancienne
l'Héritz,
directrice générale du
who
groupe
is
NJ,
the
juste
past
après le jingle.
Director General of the NG Group and who is Chairman and CEO of Blunomy.
Je vous propose de vous asseoir
So
là.
please have a seat here.
Isabelle, bonjour. C'est
Isabelle,
un
good
plaisir de
morning.
vous avoir
Good
parmi nous
morning. It's It's always a pleasure to have you with us here. You're going to help us open this day of discussion. And this is a very delicate mission. We want to launch our work and reflection. Quite obviously, we have prepared this a bit with Isabelle. So you do not, you in fact present the ecological transition not as a series of constraints, but as of opportunities. And I'd like you to specify the message you have for the textile sector, the CHF. This sector is not an exception. Is that your mission? Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm not a specialist in the textile sector. I'm from the industrial world, the energy sector. You know, the energy sector, which is experiencing an interesting transition. You know that the energy players have been confronted with this question of transition for some 15 years already. So there are a number of synergies here. I'm not a specialist in your sector, but I'm very interested in what you do. I think this sector is very specific because it affects everyone. Everyone. It's a very unique sector. So, what you do is extremely important. Each time you give people who dress every day, each time you give them to join in this action that is dear to everyone. So this is very bold. This is courageous. I think it has a colossal impact. I think it's also important from the ability this sector has to make society change, the way we dress, of course. So this is a real challenge, and there are some similarities, I must say. You know, everyone is in the same boat. Everything is complicated for everyone, not just for the textile sector. It's not easy for the textile sector, but it's not easy for everyone, in fact. And this is very characteristic of the transition. Maybe here, I know we could say a lot of things on this, but maybe I could highlight two things. First, contrary to the earlier industrial transition, because the industrial sector has changed, and this is true of the textile sector. What's really important is that we have to change things without really having the solution yet. We have to act without knowing exactly what needs to be done. So, you know, with transition, you have technologies that have arrived, solutions which have been very efficient in the past. So we would adopt them, and some players would disappear from a sector. So the solution would actually provoke the change. Here, things are different. We need to change. And I think that if you're here this morning, it's because you understand we have to change. But how to change? That's rather hazy. We're not yet sure about how. We need to move, we need to act in a bit of a precarious situation because we don't know exactly where we're going. You know that in the energy sector, there was a radical transition. If we look at the production of electricity using coal fired plants, well, we came to realize we had to change things. We had to start this change movement. We could see the first steps, of course, but we didn't know what the future steps would be. So we advanced and learned as we went along. And you became aware, maybe, you became aware of the need to do this without it yet being compulsory. No, at the time when we stopped the use of coal, there was no law yet. There was some people, you know, that gave the mission to bring energy wherever it was needed and where it didn't yet exist to bring electricity everywhere. I was part of a group, you know, where we were trying to bring this energy everywhere in the world with the technology of the time, of course. And there were good reasons for this. But little by little, we came to realize this was good. But at the same time, we were contributing to a major problem that was beginning to emerge. Nobody forced us to change, but this went hand in hand with a DNA that we were committed to. And because we were international, the goal was to make the company have a future and be capable of surviving in a transition that was appearing. It was today it's clear, but at the time it wasn't all that clear. If you look at the evolution in terms of climate change, it's there was nothing that was compulsory when we started changing things. Well, this is why it's so important to say that I have a business that works well, but we have to change things. Yes, that was part of our business. There are businesses in the industrial sector that I work with on these issues of transition. Well, you have professions, businesses that have to be replaced by others that are just emerging. But very often they're profitable for sure. But if you don't switch, if you don't change, if you don't take the risk sufficiently early on to make these emerging activities your major activity and your ability to make that activity viable, then you'll have problems. It's clear energy has gone through this before other sectors, industrial sectors. We see the difference. We see, when we talk about exploration, for example, we're talking of exploration of different resources, different equipment, materials that have to be prepared. It's something, exploration in the sense of testing things, taking the risk and not knowing exactly how things are going to work, but you have to launch yourself. You have to obviously work with the shareholders' short-term approach and the industrialist long-term approach. Yes, this is something that applies to all sectors. We, like all other sectors, we have shareholders, so there's a lot of pressure. I remember very clearly that we had to recruit shareholders who wanted to work for the long term. In our history, we decided to stop the coal-fired plants for the production of electricity. We decided to do this very early on, and we decided to do it immediately. Things did not come about overnight, of course, because the electricity sector is one that has to be organized. But we did this before having, getting the other sectors off the ground. It was clear that we were going to reduce our historical activities. There were other activities which could maintain a certain stability as we moved. But you have to know that we had a U-shaped curve, which was very special, and we had to convince the shareholders to go along with this. And we had to build on this curve with our teams, uh, build the pace of transition in each country, because when you're dealing with geothermal production, it's different. Each country is different. The local reality is by a definition specific. I think that a transition is built from the bottom up with a few clear ingredients. Well, for us, it was clear we stopped coal, the use of coal. And this was all part of the decision-making process. We had a clear approach. We wanted to be the leader in the 3D approach: decentralized, digitalize, and decarbonize. So what this meant is that, there were people who were very happy with this idea, but some were not. So, in fact, coming back to the shareholders, there was the whole question of managing time management. We went round the world to meet with the shareholders. A majority of them are Anglo-Saxon shareholders. We showed them the curve and we asked them if they were ready to back us, for 5 years, for the next 5 years. So for 5 years, they would earn less money. Yes, we targeted 4 years. We said that at the end of 4 years, we would come back to a certain level of cash generation, to an economic dynamism. We would once again have all of the ingredients that make up the P&L sheet. So we stopped our main activity at the beginning, and we would have greater growth possibilities in front of us because, we knew that we were in a sector that was going to decrease. We had shareholders who said, yes, you're probably right, but my time horizon is 6 months. I wager on 6 months. So I'll come back when you're finished. But we did find a handful of shareholders who were willing to accept this timeline. And what's important is to build alliances over time with the clarity necessary. We didn't hide the fact that we were going to start from scratch, and we made commitments, and it worked. And after 4 years, well, the people who followed us made a good deal because they got 50% payback. So it's really important to find people who are willing to go along with you over a certain time, a time period which is compatible for the industrial sector, but not the financial sometimes. So you have to ask people to follow you, to support you. That's really important. Here we have the shareholders, you have the internal, and you have the board, of course. You speak of bottom up, that's fine, but you had to get these three different players to come together. Was that easy? How did you create the necessary awareness for them to follow you? The board of directors represents the shareholders. So obviously, you start with them. They came to understand that we were on a descending curve. So then, it's important to adopt a direction you want to move in. I need 18 months. Okay, I need 18 months to put together a project with a real alliance supporting that project. So you start that way. In companies, there is a certain capacity to federate within the company around a vision. This is fundamental because, along the way, you're going to come up against difficulties you hadn't planned on. So we have to start like that. The circular economy starts in the company. It's cooperation within the company. When we started our project, it was more like a silo organization. But there were the gas specialists, the coal specialists. There were experts from various technologies. And if you say, okay, if the future is the 3Ds, an integrated system deeply rooted in the territory, it's not going to work. You have to start from the customer and bring everything he needs to the customer and say, this is going to be achieved through the 3D solution. And this starts internally. I think that in your own textile sector, you have to start in-house first. You have to come to an agreement with your teams inside the company, with the customers, with the suppliers, upstream, downstream. Because in fact, it's a circular approach, so everyone has to be involved. I think you have a few slides showing the method which will enable us to better understand things. Let's look at this slide. Yeah, this is my hobby, if you like. I'm sorry, but you will see something which is very much a question of energy. I think there was never so great a need for everyone to say, wait, this is the future. You know, that if if we only use our rational approach, if we wait for the others to start and to clear the way, that's usually the way people want to advance. You know, the rules of the game do not help us. Given that we're judged on the short term, well, if we could ask others to show the way, that would be the way to move. Leadership is that, okay, this is the future and this is what I want to do, so we're going to move forward. But I think that there is a way of working to bring reason to support the movement. If we can go back with the slides, what you see here are tools that are beginning to develop in the market. Investors look at companies in this way. What are the colors? This is a automobile sector, an automobile equipment manufacturer. If we look at the investor, we have to look at the share of the activity which is compatible with the future. That's in green. The part of the activity which is threatened by the transition is what you see in red, and you have different shades of red representing different time spans. In yellow, you see uh, the place where you need commitment. This is where you're going to start. You have to start thanks to a momentum. And this is where reason is going to give impetus to this momentum. You have this curve that is U-shaped, and you start with the activity which is at risk. Now, we're looking at this player A. Then we look at a second player, has the same geographic area, same size, same market value. But the market says, I open the box and what do I see inside? Now, this is interesting. This helps you to enter that U curve. And here you start looking at the next quarter. For 2 years, for a year and a half, we went down. We saw a decrease in our business viability. So, everyone who has experienced the period will remember this. This is going to help you during the descending part of the curve where you have to invest resources even though it's not paying off yet. So these are tools. Now, this is not an invention or a dream. This is supported by some of the biggest economists in the world, people who have financed all of the company, who have looked at all the companies they finance using this approach. Let me tell you, there's a lot to reflect on here. How, in the textile sector, you can develop such a vision. All right, I don't optimize my results immediately, but I'm moving forward. I'm getting ahead. And obviously, the value differences are clear. The more investors look at the world in this way, the more they will be willing to move their investments, their resources towards those who are moving towards that U curve. So this is where cooperation is necessary with the financiers, with the suppliers, with the customers. When you enter that U curve, you have to come to an agreement on how you're going to go from A to B with a defined time span, with clear rules, with things you have put on the table. And I must say that when we made the decision to stop coal, I was the person who was carrying this approach. And everyone said, okay, fine, you're going to deal with this. So, what is the strategy here? I don't know. But I didn't know at the time what I was going to do. But you have to have a clear idea of where you want to go from A to B, and that implies a lot of work. And I think that we had colossal employment issues at the time. You know, all of these plants that were going to be stopped had large teams working. And one of the reasons that we managed to do this was that, first of all, it was clear we would destroy jobs in certain places, but we would create a whole bunch of jobs in other places. So we had to look at things from the point of view of the employees, the company, the shareholders. We had to come to a formal agreement to say that anyone who was mobile in the group would have his place. Anyone who, I said, I committed myself to the fact that anyone who was ready to change professions, there would be a job for them. I would support them. Everyone who would change locations, well, these people had their place in the group. So what I'm saying here quite clearly is that this kind of change is colossal. And the more you describe it, the more you dare, the more you create the safety nets, because you have to have these safety nets, the more you work with the shareholders with the safety net, you're going to see that when you enter the U, it's going to enable you to advance. And we had that return of 50%. These are almost explicit constraints which don't hide what hurts in these changes.
Moi, ça me fait penser à, effectivement, dans la coopération, pour vraiment arriver à coopérer, il faut jouer livre ouvert. En gros, il faut être transparent, il faut se faire confiance. Et ça, c'est pas simple.
You have to be transparent, and it's not easy to do that. So in terms of sharing values, that's very important. In terms of the textiles, where you have very many players, so you need to work with each other. I think that this, in fact, is the theme of today. You have to agree on how, on where you're going to go to define your vision, and what is point B then, and when do we have to achieve that? So I think that you have to open the books, the margins. So I've seen these wonderful experiments, even in your sector as well. So the people who were kind of opening up this, so the margin today is 3%. How much is it for you? So these are things that you also experience. So the clearer things are, and the more explicit the rules, the more you can open up the books, the more you can share the values. And that makes things work better. So, of course, it takes time. You can't change things in the space of 6 months. So you have to have long contracts here. And I think there's, in terms of a value chain, there's always one player who's stronger than the others to say, okay, well, I'm going to guarantee you some volumes. Okay, let's take a risk. But so this player can do this more than others can. So it takes a long time, and you have to be able to be an open book in terms of margins. And when you manage to do that, that creates trust, and you can't replace that. Thank you very much, Isabelle Kocher, for having shared your time with us and talking about this experience. So we can give you a round of applause.
Merci Isabelle.
Thank you, Isabelle. Now we're going to the first sequence of this day. So don't forget that in terms of the chat, you can always, or wherever you are, you can also ask questions, and you can also ask those in the next session. The jingle, please. Together, let's build a collection for the future. So we're going to open a new section, a new sector. So this is about collection and sorting CHF. So this is, it's vital now to understand why this gesture is much more than just a simple regulation. So why is it a responsible act in terms of the environment? In France in 2023, 268,000 tons were collected. So that's 3.7 kilos per inhabitant. But yet sorting things is often seen as a bit confused, has not been a priority. So we're going to talk about this then. So each individual gesture is part of an industrial process, giving a second life to these materials. So we're going to look at this with Hugo. And of course, this allows us to put off the overshoot day. So what is the overshoot day then? Do you know what it is? Basically, this is a date when humanity has consumed all the different resources that the planet can regenerate in 1 year. And let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask it. You can put your hand up, and this is in the thumbnail. So here's the question then. What was the date for the overshoot day in 1971? So you can put your hand up. Was it the 1st of August? I can't see any hands up. 20th of November. So we've got some hands up there. So about a third of people have got their hand up, 25th of December. So a few more hands up there. So yes, in terms of the interactive thumbnail, so people said that it was 25th of December, and indeed it was in 1971. And then we've got the Medoc report, 1992. So we know that things are accelerating from them, and gradually we'll see that man and the humanity is responsible for the climate deregulation in 2024. So now we're talking about the 1st of August. So this was the overshoot day in 2024. So now Hugo Conzelmann, so you're with us. I'm going to ask you to come up here, please. You're in charge of public and legal affairs for the circular economy. So we're going to listen to a jingle and we're going to move forward together.
Alors Hugo,
Hugo, I'm relying on you then. So what have we got here? We've got about 12 minutes together. And so we're going to have to set the scene. First of all, can you explain us what the International Institute for the Circular Economy is? So good morning, everybody. I hope that you can hear me. So in a couple of words, so our institute then is a think tank, an association founded in 2013. And so it has many different players who are all very engaged in the circular economy, and its aim is to make the circular economy visual through a certain number of actions. The first is to say what's behind the circular economy. So carrying out all these different studies in order to qualify what the circular economy is, what it isn't. And another major axis in terms of our work is advocacy, so that we can modify regulations so that we move towards a more circular economy. So now we have a better vision of what your institute does. So can we talk about sorting? Do you have a couple of figures to give us? Well, I have quite a lot of figures to give you, in fact, and that's why I have my notes with me. So where are we at? First of all, what we can see is that the world consumption of textile fibers has doubled since 2008. So in France, we've gone from 10 to 12 tons. So this is a subject which is quite significant. So we have a mass of textiles, which is much larger than a couple of years ago. So in 2008, this is where we have this regulation coming in on textiles, and we had to anticipate the situation. If we look at collection in terms of the European Union, so this is quite an interesting comparison to make. So in France, we're at 38 to 40% of textiles collected. So in 2008, we're at 19%. So you can see, so there's a kind of a big difference in terms of collection, which is very important to note. So you said in France, quite specifically, we're at 260 million tons of textiles are being collected. So that's about 150 tons more than when this rule came into play. So in terms of 830,000 tons of textile that come into the market. So when the REP was created, we were at 600,000. But there's also a flow of textiles which is much bigger, which means that the collection figures are kind of stagnating. Even though we have the rep, which is important. So why am I saying this? So collecting textiles, this will allow us to create new resources. We know that the sector which has managed to bring all these different players together in terms of harmonizing the different flows of sorting and collection. And in France, we're at 60% of textiles which are collected and which are reused to be re-employed. So this is important, and about 30% of those textiles that are collected, those are recycles, and the rest are incinerated. So there are a couple of obstacles then, and if we identify the obstacles, then we can also identify opportunities for the future. So what you need to understand here is that without collection, we can't, or without sorting centers, we can't have any potential resources. And this potential resource, this is something which is extremely important. And there's also a subject that we need to note. In 2014, we had about 74% of textiles that were reused or could be reused. And today we're at 57%. So the percentage has gone down a bit. And what's this due to? This is due to textiles of poor quality. And this is an issue in terms of the feedstock. It's also important for the operators working in collection. It's because they were relying on this quality of the textiles. So yes, there's another issue as well in terms of a disappearance of textiles of very high quality. And so a number of collection operators were relying on that, and this has disappeared because due to new practices of individuals, sales online platforms and sales online, and so this disappearance could threaten the funding model of the collection operators, and it's a subject which is quite significant. Has any progress been made? Are there any leads? Are there any possible changes that could kick in? Because we can't remain in this situation, quite clearly. So the first possible way of improving things is to deal with the flows upstream. So in terms of this mass of textiles which comes onto the market, and this could threaten the amount of clothes that are collected. So we need a certain kind of consistency between the public policies that are carried out and also the objectives that are set for the different players and operators. And also we need to do more awareness raising for the general public so that they can control and really see what the challenges are, also so that they know how they can go and give their clothes and do the sorting. And this hasn't necessarily been taken on board yet. People don't really know what to do, and this is a real issue. And this is important for the industry then, especially for the textile recycling. We have to look for innovative ways of dealing with this. So there was a recent announcement, Cardios, and they managed to develop a quite mature technology in a closed loop. So they managed to transform some reused fibers into new fibers. So this was a closed loop process, and this will perhaps revolutionize the vision that we have of collection and make things a bit more profitable. And in order to achieve this, then we need to accompany the sector, we need to help them, we have to do more awareness raising for the citizens. And so we have to deal with things all across the board, yes. So when we know that 80% of the impact on the environment from a product which comes from the design. And so we realized then that the issue of collection, well, whether it's recycling, reuse, this is something which is quite key, and this will allow us to create a new resource. Of course, this upstream flow is very important, but if we want to be able in the future to develop a more virtuous, more circular way of dealing with things, we have to start with the sorting gesture. Thank you very much, Hugo. So you're from the Institute of the Circular Economy. Thank you very much. Did you know that according to a report from the World Meteorological Association, the extreme weather phenomena has increased by 50% over the last couple of years? So the three indicators to say, to talk about these natural disasters, so the number of events that take place, the number of human victims, and also the cost of the disaster. And did you know this? According to an observatory, France is the second country which has had the largest number of natural disasters in 2024, and this was after the United States. Perhaps things have changed this year, but it's interesting as something to keep in mind. So now we're going to look at a new very crucial issue. So the people online, you can ask your questions to put them to the speakers. So they're going to come on stage during the Inès Bizot, president of June Marketing, Antoine, Guillou, works for the town hall, reduction of waste and other things. Sophie Lefebvre, eco-conception and the circular economy for Yserd Kids. And then, so we're going to have a jingle and then we're going to meet our speakers.
Voilà, on a passé le jingle. J'ai une question.
I have a question to ask you once again. This is a question that will appear in the interactive thumbnail. So for everybody who's watching, so wherever you are in the Somme, Aix-la-Chapelle, etc. So I've also seen Marseille. So the question, so you can raise your hands for this. According to consumers, what is the main obstacle in terms of sorting textiles? So what's the main obstacle there? Is it the lack of stations or drop-off points? Is it lack of the use of these CHFs? Is it the answer A? So not a lot of hands up for that one. Is it answer B? So lack of knowledge of the procedure. So is it answer C? A lack of information on the drop-off points. So we can say that it's answer B. What would you have said? A, B, or C? The three? All three? 2 and 3? So in fact, I know the answer because it's my job to go and collect figures, but in reality, they all go together. In fact, the main reason why people don't give their clothes is that they don't know where the drop-off points are. So that is the case, but there's a lot of other reasons as well. So at the end of the day, it's a whole system. So, well, that's exactly what I was going to say next. So the 47,000 drop-off points, that is on the Refashion site. So this is a reflex that you need to have. So it's so you have a map of these 47,000 drop-off points. And let me tell you that it does work. So now we're going to have some questions now. And I think that that's quite obvious. So let me sit down. Inès, we're going to start with you. I need you to kind of set the scene and give us an overview. So you've been carrying out all these different studies and you draw conclusions from those. This year, you carried out studies on collection and sorting in terms of quality and quantity. Is that right? So what are the main conclusions you can draw? What we've learned from these studies is that in terms of sorting at home, citizens, 74% of them do this once a year. So the problem is not really, okay, I want to sort my clothes to make more space for others. But you want to sort your clothes, and this conclusion was interesting because this is about an act of charity. These clothes that we don't need anymore, that they can be useful to other people. So that's about 40% of the motivations and reasons that are given. So we can think about the different associations, major associations, local associations, refugees, women who've been victims of violence. So these used clothes will be on the shoulders of somebody who really needs them. So that's the first motivation. But when we ask people about do you sort for ecological reasons, there's only 28% of people do it for that particular reason. So we can say that there's a huge job to be done in terms of explaining to French people that one of the main reasons that you have to sort your clothes is indeed this the circularity of the sector and for the good of the planet. So even if the drop-off points, so this is the first point of clothes that we sort, and there's a whole problem with these drop-off points, but resale of these clothes, and so if there's still a market value to these clothes, so a third of people try to resell these clothes. Half of these are young people. So the first thing and the first reason for sorting is to try and resell for young people anyway their clothes. So they know that, but then sometimes it's complicated, but it is nevertheless a reflex, and it is a reflex because so they tend to say, okay, this item of clothing is still in good condition. I don't want to put it in a drop-off point. Those drop-off points are quite dirty. I don't know what's going to happen to it. So that's the problem with drop-off points. So in terms of your studies, people would give their clothes a lot more if they knew about what happens to them. Yes, there's a lack of knowledge in terms of what happens once you've given your item of clothing. As I said before, they think that this goes directly to those people who need them. So they don't know about what can be recycled, what can't be recycled. And in terms of this lack of knowledge, there's often incorrect interpretations, and people are saying, well, if this is just going to end up in a bin in Africa, well, it'd be better to put it in a bin in France, because in France we tend to manage waste better. So 28% of people basically put their used clothes in the bin because they think this is better than dropping it off at a drop-off point. So I just want to add something there. So an item of clothing should never be thrown away. This is something that people don't know, because all those very damaged items of clothing, 66% of French people think that you can't give them, you can't put it in a drop-off point, you can't give it to an association, so or a charity, and it's even worse for sneakers, for lingerie, used lingerie. So people prefer to chuck them in the bin. So because they don't know what else to do. So we're going to continue to talk about this. So these are the first lessons drawn, but also you've talked about solutions. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Sophie Lefebvre, so you represent OKD. OKD, just a couple of words on that. Well, it's a brand of clothing for babies and young children. So we really want to create durable products that last over time. And so we have a new economic model in terms of second-hand clothing that we're setting up at the moment. And as a retailer, we are responsible, and really we do manage the clothes that have come to the end of their life, as it were. So if you were to isolate, to identify an initiative, an action, a system that you've implemented, because there's something that you said while we were preparing for this conversation, that it's very important to be responsible when you're a retailer on the market. So you are a market player, but you have to manage those products that arrived at the end of their life. And so we've set up a new process, a new partnership with a new organization, synergies for textiles. They're in the room as it happens. And we've set up a new internal process, a new collaboration with this organization. And the idea is to propose these drop-off points around the different stores for textiles and other things. And then we've internalized the logistics for our sales points. And so then they go to the CHF sorting centers. And so there are three possibilities. We've got what we call the cream, 20% of items, and then we have what we call solidarity stores that are close to sorting centers, and about 50% of items that go for recycling. So and 30% go to be incinerated. So these are products that we can't manage at the moment. For the moment, I say. So that's important. So I share what you said in terms of with our partners. There's no re-exporting. So we collect. There are only three possible outcomes there. So either they become high quality textiles, or they can be incinerated, or reuse. So you talked about this kind of open book. So there's an issue of trust when we talk about your customers, your clients, customers in general. What do you do in order to work and be more transparent, more work on traceability? Well, we had several objectives. So we wanted to have a reliable traceability. We have the flows from our stores right up to collection or sorting. And so we have a partnership with Main dans la Main. And so we also want to support and work with people across France. That's part of one of our wishes. And also we want to innovate to create new resources. So traceability is extremely important because in terms of the normal processes, we have to know how much a product can be recycled. Antoine, Guillou. So you're deputy at the town hall, you work on waste, recycling and sanitation, amongst other things. So what about this strategy? How is that part of the global strategy of the town hall? So in order to, so we're talking about the different waste that's collected. So we're talking about 1 million tons per year of waste, which are collected by the Paris Town Hall. So within that, we've got textiles that represents quite a large amount. Within, in terms of the green bin, we're talking about several thousands of textiles that go into what we call the green bin, rather than being given to charities, collected or given to drop-off points. So recycled. So this is a major challenge then for us to manage to take those textiles from the green bin. And in terms of the flows of textiles, just like flows for other products, we have a whole host of different actions for Parisians. So awareness raising, communication. Also, we think about the collection strategy, and perhaps we'll go back to that in a moment. So these famous drop-off points and where we can put them in the best possible places. So for that, we work with the retailers, Refashion, so that and how have to think about how we can support the collecting and sorting centers. They're a very important link in the chain in terms of collection points, but also in terms of awareness raising, because they do a lot of awareness raising for the Parisian population. So you have to give things and you have to throw things in the right place if an item can be recycled. Okay, I learned then that in Paris, so you've got this idea of Paris being a zero waste city. So we want to make sure that within a certain territory. That can be a number of different streets, a certain arrondissement. So we try to organize initiatives, basically organized by various associations, try and mobilize people in that particular neighborhood in terms of reducing waste and sorting, etc. So this is something that we launched 5 years ago, and it's doing very well in Paris. So we're going to take this a bit further. We're reviewing our strategy for reducing waste. So we have a strategy for 2030, and our objective is to have greater granularity. We know that the sorting gesture, so this is done in the home. And so we have to define ways of supporting these programs in the different residences so that we can encourage the Parisians to do their sorting in their own residences. So this issue of transparency, communication, this is extremely important so that we can get people to sort. And there are lots of different flows of sorting, and this is why we're transparent. So as long as people don't think that we've dealt with the issue of transparency, then it's going to be very difficult to encourage them to sort. So in fact, we went to the streets in Paris, and we talked to the consumers, and we asked them a couple of questions. We'll be back with you in just a moment. So do you usually sort your clothes? No, I don't. Perhaps once every 10 years. No, I sort my bin about twice a year. So yes, I do sort my clothes. I do this once a year with my mum. So what do you do with your sorted clothes? Well, very often I recycle them as I can. So, for example, for the shirts, I cut off the sleeves. And I wear them in summer. So I help family members. So I take them to the drop-off point. So I do everything I can. But and I try to give my clothes a second life, repair them, for example, and if they're not too bad, I give them to people so that somebody else can wear them. I put them in a big bin, and then that's it. So with clothes that I no longer wear, I give them to members of my family or associations, charities. So I sell them on the Bon Coin at a very low price because it makes a bit of money for me. Or I give them to those people who need them. If they're not too damaged, I put them in recycling points. Sometimes I give them to Emmaüs. But if they're too damaged, too many holes, I throw them away. Have you already thrown your clothes in the bin? No, never. So I put them in the drop-off point. So yes, I've thrown away some socks. No, never. So if I've got socks with holes on or underpants, then yes, I do throw them away. For the most damaged items that really can't be recycled, I do them. But sometimes I use them to clean the car. So especially tights and underwear. Sometimes I throw them in the bin, or I give them to a charity, or I put them in the right sorting bin. So we can see that people do have the right reflexes.
J'ai une question qui est arrivée.
So I have a question that has come in. So what can we put in these collection bins? Dirty clothes, damaged clothes. So what else can we put in these drop-off points? So I'm talking to experts here. So there's an incomplete list, but I think we can put household linens in there as well. So this is something we need to speed up on, awareness raising, communication. So often
we heard a lady who spoke about the bins, the banks. She spoke of garbage as well, which is interesting. The word is interesting. We understand now why people do not want to put
Je voulais
clothing
qu'on s'attarde un
in
petit peu sur
garbage
des
cans.
choses que vous avez dites
Let's
tous les
talk a
trois
little bit about
autour de la
what you
coopération.
have said
C'est un peu le
with
mot-clé, donc
regards to
forcément, on va y
cooperation.
revenir régulièrement sur ce mot-clé
This is the
coopération.
key word
Mais il est
today,
quand
is
même crucial.
cooperation.
Vous, chez Occasionally,
But
il est crucial de
I
nouer
think that
des
for you,
partenariats
it's
avec un
important
peu tout
to
le monde, donc y compris
establish
effectivement les
Oui, tout à
agences.
fait. Bah,
partnerships
c'est
with
un
a bit
vrai enjeu et
everyone, with
ce
customers.
partenariat et cette
Yes,
collaboration, en fait,
the partnership,
voilà, il
the
faut qu'on connaisse, qu'on
collaboration
comprenne les
is
flux, qu'on sache,
something
quoi,
that
du coup, ce
is
qu'on
important because we
inciter
have
auprès
to
de nos
collect
clients
the
pour justement
flows
valoriser au mieux, les
and we
inciter
have to
à ramener
incite
plus. Et cette
customers to bring
collaboration
back
avec nos partenaires,
more
c'est crucial parce que du
used
coup, on se rend
clothing.
compte de leurs difficultés,
And the
de ce que nous,
work
on
with the
peut
partners is
améliorer
very
du
important
quotidien
because we
avec eux.
need to understand
Oui,
their
c'est top.
difficulties, what we can do to
Et
improve
pour vous,
things.
Antoine Guillou, c'est pareil, à la mairie de
What about
Paris,
for you,
peut-être qu'un de vos rôles, c'est
Hugo, at the
de
Paris
créer les
City
liens
Hall?
aussi
Maybe
pour
your
que des
role
coopérations
is
se
to
fassent.
create
Oui,
these links for
un des enjeux
cooperation.
majeurs pour moi, c'est de faire en
Yes,
sorte
for me,
qu'on puisse
one of the
avoir,
major
on disait tout à l'heure,
challenges
cette
is to
géométrie
ensure
des richesses en
that,
complexité, parce que le nombre de
you
filières,
know,
pour la bonne
we
cause, j'allais dire, parce que
need to,
le nombre de
obviously, we
filières et le
see
nombre de
that
flux
there,
qu'il faut
the
séparer
number of
s'accentue.
sectors and
Nos filières
flows that have
d'approvisionnement, etc. Donc tout ça est
of
une bonne
ways
chose,
that
mais
have to be
vu
prepared
d'usager,
is
pour le coup,
increasing.
cette
And this
complexité
is
grandement
why it
geste
makes
le tri.
things
Donc on a
very, very
une partie des déchets
complex
qui
for
sont
the
collectés par service
user.
public, on a une
You
partie
know,
des
the
déchets qui
whole
sont collectés par d'autres
sorting
acteurs.
process
Et
becomes
donc,
complex. We
mon
have to
rôle à
look
moi,
at
c'est à la
the
fois, et le rôle de la
ways, the
ville, c'est
different
de faire en sorte
players.
qu'à la fois, évidemment, nous,
And
on joue
for the
notre rôle sur ce qui
city,
relève du service public, mais
obviously,
aussi qu'on organise
our
ce que font
role
les
is
autres
to
acteurs en termes de
standardize what
collecte dans
other
les villes. Parce que si
players are
chacun déploie ses
doing
bornes
in
avec sa
terms of
propre
collection.
signalétique,
Because
ses
if
propres
everyone
emplacements,
has their
etc., évidemment,
own
pour un distributeur, c'est à peu près, je pense, le meilleur chemin pour
bins
ne pas arriver au résultat qu'on souhaite. Donc notre rôle, c'est
with
un peu
different rules,
ce rôle
etc.,
d'ensemblier
it makes
pour faire en
it
sorte que
difficult.
la
So our
stratégie
role is to
de collecte, mais aussi la stratégie
orchestrate
de
the
sensibilisation autant que possible et de
collection
communication, ça c'est le plus dur,
strategy, the
sur le territoire
awareness
parisien,
as well, which
soit
is
bien
important
cohérente
for
pour être
the
bien comprise
Paris territory.
des gens. Parce que
And
si chacun est
this
dans son
so
couloir
that
de
people
nage
understand
et
things, because if
dans chaque
each
filière fait ce qui
sector,
vraiment
each
pas ce que
one
chacun
works
peut
in
faire,
his
bien entendu,
own
mais ça peut quand
way
même arriver par mécanique.
and acts
Si
differently,
chacun est
that
dans son
we don't
couloir de
know how
nage
we're
et
going
organise
to be able
quelque chose qui a
to
l'air merveilleux à l'échelle de
work
sa filière,
together.
mais qui en
I
fait
mean,
n'est pas
if each
coordonné
sector
avec
thinks
les
they've
autres
done
filières,
something
là, ça a de
wonderful,
fortes chances de ne
but
pas marcher,
without
ou en tout cas de ne pas
coordination
marcher
with the other
au niveau
sectors,
qu'on souhaite atteindre. Donc
there's
voilà,
less
donc nous,
chance that
notre
this
rôle, c'est
will work.
d'organiser effectivement cette
Our role
coopération
is to
entre
organize
les
that
acteurs. Et puis j'évoquais tout à
cooperation
l'heure
between the different
aussi
players.
les ressourceries, les
You
recycleries. J'y
know,
reviens
I
un peu parce
spoke
qu'elles
of
ont un rôle
these
important. Le
different
textile, c'est évidemment
recycling
un de leurs flux majeurs pour les ressourceries du
organizations,
territoire
people
parisien.
who
Donc c'est vrai qu'il y a aussi ce rôle aussi pour
resell
nous, en tant
products,
que
etc.
collectivité,
You
d'essayer
know,
de trouver les bons
for
équilibres
the
entre
city, what
l'ensemble des
we've
acteurs,
tried
que
to
ce soit les
do
metteurs sur le
is
marché, que
find
ce
the
soit
right
les
balance
éco-organismes, que ce
between the
soit les
different
ressourceries
players,
et les recycleries. On sait
eco
qu'aujourd'hui, le
organizations,
secteur du textile voilà, connaît
recycling,
des bouleversements
people
importants. Et
who,
moi, les recycleries et les recycleries, j'en parle très
have
souvent. Mais
these
10 ans avant, on avait
second-hand
des noms de très
stores,
bonne qualité, ce qui nous
etc.
permettait de
So,
financer justement la
if
collecte et
if
ensuite
we
la
can
fin de vie
work together
des
to finance the
gisements de plus mauvaise
collection
qualité qu'on avait et qui allaient au recyclage,
and
évidemment.
of
Et
the
aujourd'hui,
end of
ces gisements
life
de
of
qualité, bah, les
products,
recycleries, les ressourceries
but we
diminuent
have
très
to be
fortement. Et
sure
donc, ça
that
met
the
en péril
feedstock
en réalité
is
leur modèle. Et donc
interesting
ça
and
va bien.
usable.
Et pour autant,
So
on
we
a
don't
toujours
want
autant de déchets textiles à évacuer, elles aussi. Donc ça veut dire que
we
ce
still have a
modèle de
lot
financement, la
of
responsabilité des acteurs,
textile
des metteurs
waste
sur le marché, des éco-organismes,
to
dans
eliminate and
l'invention d'un nouveau
recycle.
modèle de
So we
financement de
have
tout ça va
to
être clé.
be careful with the
J'ai une
models,
question, alors
the
peut-être
financing
pour vous,
models as
Sophie,
well
une
for
question du
this
chat.
process.
Pourquoi n'y a-t-il pas,
A
bonjour, pourquoi
question
n'y a-t-il
from
pas
the
des risques à
chat.
l'incinération des textiles? Ça peut sembler
Why?
vertueux de créer de la
I
chaleur, mais
mean,
qu'en est-il des émissions de gaz à
why
effet de serre?
not,
C'est bien posé aussi
look
Oui,
at
ce,
the
c'est
ce
risks
sujet-là.
exactement,
of the
rien n'est
incineration of
parfait
textiles, which
jusqu'à la
pollutes?
dernière goutte, il faut le
Right
savoir.
to the very
Ce qui est du coup
last
incinéré, c'est vraiment des produits qu'on
drop.
ne sait
You
pas
need to know
recycler à
that what
date sur
is
une filière
incinerated
industrielle ou sur un débouché
is what
industriel en tout cas.
cannot be sold to an industrial
Oui, il y aura
sector.
forcément quelques
It's the,
émanations,
things that we cannot
etc. Mais il vaut peut-être mieux ça,
deal
c'est
with
de se revaloriser
otherwise.
en fait. Tout ce qui est
Yes,
incinéré,
there
du coup, repart
is,
dans un système de
some
récupération
pollution from the
d'énergie, etc. Et
incineration,
dans tous les cas, il vaut
but,
peut-être mieux cela
there's the question
qu'un
of
déchet qui
maybe
se retrouve
energy
n'importe où,
recovery,
soit sur notre territoire ou ailleurs
but it's
sur cette
clear
planète. Enfin, voilà. Mais
Et ça,
rien n'est
that
parfait, malheureusement.
on en
nothing is
parlera un petit peu
perfect,
plus tout à l'heure dans le
We
deuxième
really
temps.
try to
On va parler solutions,
do
on va
what
parler
we
des
can, though.
solutions liées à vos
Let's
enseignements.
talk
Et
about
on est à nouveau
solutions.
retourné dans la rue.
Let's go
et on regarde
back
un peu le micro-trottoir et on
to
revient.
these street interviews.
Quelles sont vos principales motivations
What are your
pour
major
vous rejoindre le collectif?
motivations for
Ça évite de
taking
jeter
clothes to the
le
election
fait
point?
qu'il
Well,
sait que
avoids
certains
throwing things away.
ont besoin de ces
Well, the
vêtements,
idea that
qu'ils n'ont
some
pas
other people need the
nécessairement les moyens pour
clothing and
l'acheter. Du
don't
coup, c'est ça qui
necessarily
motive le
have the
plus, quoi.
means
Simplement le
to
fait de
buy
savoir
themselves
qu'ils puissent être
clothing.
réutilisés.
Bah, déjà,
This
je me dis que ça
so
peut
that they can
servir
be
à des gens qui n'ont pas
reused. Well, I think that
forcément les
this
moyens de pouvoir acheter
can
du
be
neuf ou de
used by
l'occasion
people who don't
systématiquement.
necessarily have the means to buy new clothes. Well, I think that it's so that it be used, that they be served, they have a second life, that this doesn't
Vous savez
end
que
up in
certains magasins
nature.
reprennent les vêtements.
You know that some stores take clothing back? Really? I didn't know that at all.
Pas
Je
encore.
savais pas du tout.
No, I didn't know
Alors pas
that.
du tout parce que j'achète pas de
Not
vêtements en
at all.
magasin, j'achète tout sur internet
No,
depuis 20
because,
ans.
I don't buy clothes in stores. I go online. No, I didn't know that. This is something new for me. No, I didn't know
Alors j'en ai
that. No, I
entendu
didn't know.
parler, effectivement.
I had heard about
Du
this,
coup, j'imagine
yes,
que ça doit être
but I
à la
imagine
base une qualité de vêtement
that it must really depend on the
contemporaine.
quality of the
Ce qui n'est
clothing
pas mon cas.
and the
Qu'est-ce qui se passe
brands.
avec les vêtements une fois qu'ils sont déposés en
Did you
banque
know? Do
collective?
you know what happens to the clothes that
Ben
you
non,
take to the
justement, ça
collection
c'est un petit peu le problème.
bank?
Mais
No,
s'il y a
that
des
is one
problèmes,
of the
c'est pour qu'ils en fassent
problems.
quelque
But I
chose.
think that
Sinon,
if they're
Inès, c'est pour
collecting
les
the
jeter.
clothes,
Je pense qu'ils sont
it's to do
recyclés.
something with it.
Ah oui.
Well, I suppose
Je sais
it's
pas
to
comment, mais
recycle them. I
normalement
don't know
c'est
how,
vraiment recyclé, puis après
but I think
ils
they
le
probably
sous-détaillent et leur font
recycle
d'autres
them.
vêtements
And then maybe on the
pour
basis of the
redistribuer dans les
sizes,
magasins.
they
Je sais
can
qu'il y en
reproduce
qu'il y a
clothes.
une grande partie qui sont
I know
recyclées
that
et
a
l'autre qui sont
large
jetées.
portion is
Généralement, ça se
recycled and the
transforme en
rest
gros
thrown away.
bateaux qui
I think
sont
that
soit
generally they're put
adressés, vendus
into
à des fripiers à la traite,
large bales,
soit
which will
renvoyés
be
éventuellement ou
sold
vendus dans des pays
to
africains
rag
et également transformés en
collectors
fibres de tissu
by tons.
pour des
Maybe
besoins
some will be
industriels.
dismantled and disassembled to
On voit qu'il y a des
reproduce
experts en matière, oui,
threads and fibers that
Inès
will be
Bizot.
reused. So there
Après,
seem to be some
après
experts
ces
here.
enseignements, après ces micro-trottoirs, il y a quand même
Well,
des solutions
following
pour
this information,
redynamiser
there are
le geste de
solutions
tri,
to give new impetus
ce
to
qu'on
the
appelle les golden
sorting
rules,
gesture.
Oui,
avec mon
enfin,
accent.
ce sont
The
des
golden
pistes de
rules?
réflexion qu'on a mis à
Well,
jour pour
there are a
Refashion
number
pour
of
essayer voilà,
ideas
d'avoir une réflexion
that
assez
have been
360
reflected
sur
on
comment
at
redynamiser en
Refashion to have
effet
a
du point de vue
360
du
degree
citoyen
approach
le tri et la collecte.
from the point of
Alors
view of
évidemment,
the
en premier
citizen,
lieu, il y a
the
tout un enjeu
price of this collection.
d'éducation,
There's
d'explication
the
pour
education
que le Français
challenge, of
comprenne qu'on
course,
peut tout
to
donner,
make
on
the
peut tout
French
mettre
understand that you can
dans les
bring
bornes
all
et qu'ils ne
clothing
sont pas eux-mêmes en train
items
de
and
devoir
put
faire le
them
tri chez lui
in the
parce
bags.
qu'ils
They don't
ne
have to
savent pas quoi
spend their
faire.
time sorting
Le
between
deuxième
things at
enjeu, c'est
home.
l'enjeu d'expliquer la
The
revalorisation
second
parce qu'en effet, quand
challenge
on
is
dit
to explain
à un
how
citoyen, à un
we give
consommateur que sa
new
chaussette à trouver
value,
a
new
peut-être une valeur
value
pour
to
quelqu'un qui
this
va réutiliser la
clothing.
fibre, qui
It
va en
might have a
faire
value
des
for someone
briques, des
who's going
chauffages ou je ne
to
sais quoi. Tout d'un
use
coup,
the
il y a un
fibers
monde en fait qui
for
s'ouvre
to
dans la
reweave
tête
them,
de ce citoyen.
etc. So
Et donc,
this can
en fait, il
open
y a
up
vraiment
new
tout un enjeu
ideas
ici d'expliquer
in the
que
mind
chaque
of the
textile
citizen.
est une ressource
There's
et non
the
pas un
challenge
déchet.
of explaining that each
Pour lever le
textile
blason
is a resource and not
de
a
la
waste
filière, en tout cas de
product.
cette partie de la filière
Now, to
qui,
try
comme on l'a dit,
to
peut avoir des mauvaises
improve
images, donc
the
la
image
communication, la
of the
transparence, la
sector,
confiance, on
there's a
en a
need
déjà
for
parlé, sont des leviers
communication
hyper importants.
to create confidence and
La
trust,
reconsidération des différents circuits qui
reconsideration
sont
of the
proposés aux
different
citoyens
circuits
pour la collecte, c'est hyper
that are
important.
proposed
Il n'y a pas
to
de monopolisme
citizens with
automatisé,
regards to collection.
mais il peut y avoir des circuits alternatifs.
There can be alternative
Ce que
circuits.
vous faites et d'autres metteurs en marché font, c'est un
You
super
know what
exemple. Et
some
en fait,
people
ça,
do, for
pour le citoyen,
example,
c'est une grande opportunité. Il le prend vraiment comme
to
tel
tell
quand on
the
lui explique.
citizen
Et
there's a real
ici, pour Refashion, ce qui se passe
opportunity
déjà pour certains,
here
donc
with
c'est
what
super. Donc
regards
en fait, il y a
to
vraiment une grande
the
ouverture
reuse of these
de la part des
products.
citoyens pour aller déposer
In
dans
that
différents
case, they
endroits.
can lead to a great
Tout l'enjeu
open-mindedness of
de la
citizens.
communication autour de l'écologie, qui
The
aujourd'hui dans la ville est quand
challenge
même
of
une friche,
communicating
les
on
gens
the
ne savent pas ou
environment
très
as
très mal
well,
pourquoi
people
donner
do
serait un
not
geste écologique.
necessarily
Certainement que si
understand
c'était
why
mieux expliqué ou mieux
giving
compris, ce
these
serait une
clothes to
motivation très
these
forte parce que
collection
demander à
banks
donner
is
qui
an
aujourd'hui est un peu sous-estimé.
ecological
Alors,
action or
on a aussi
gesture.
eu envie
We
de
also
questionner la manière
wanted
de
to
nommer
question
ce
them
don.
on how
Donner tes
they
vêtements, est-ce que tu donnes tes vêtements, à qui tu
consider
donnes tes vêtements?
the
Parce que
donation of their
à partir du moment où on va
clothing.
continuer à employer ce
Do
mot
you give your clothes
cette sémantique du don,
when you
on
don't
risque de
use
se
them again?
raccrocher encore et
The whole
toujours à cette
question
histoire
of the
de
giving
don à
aspect
caritative.
which is linked to a charitable action, and that tends to maybe mask the ecological aspect at times. So try to have a broader view of this gesture of bringing your clothes to a collection bank. There's also the need to work on the habits, the ritual as well. With consumers, you need to nudge them, so that they act, work on certain reflection points so that people think about doing this and not every 10 years, but do this sorting more regularly with ritualized actions. The question of rallying people, the question of collaboration. Citizens want to be part of a broader action, maybe an international action, making this clothing collection a national gesture or action. Very often, citizens think that the little gestures, the little actions they carry out are useless. But when you make it a national cause, it gives meaning to this. And so there are different types of operations that can be organized and given a name. The idea of playing on the fear of missing out, because giving is a great action or gesture. So there's all that social aspect that you can play with as well. Then, everything that is repetitive is a bit of a rite is important. Then you want the gesture to be visible. People sometimes feel shameful when they're in the street with a plastic bag with these old clothes. So there's also the question of working on the contact points. And then reconciliation with the idea, make people feel that they're part of the whole process, going from the citizen right through all the different technical steps, everyone working together. It's also important for a brand sometimes, for a brand and its customer to see, that to share in this challenge, which is important for the sector. So the golden rules will be accessible. Now, if we look at what you have dealt with here, is this accessible? What's accessible on the Refashion site, I think, all of this information, you need to go through Refashion to see these rules. So very quickly, in a few minutes, let's look at what possible solutions exist. Having looked at all of these potential opportunities, Sophie, do you see any possible approaches or solutions? We've spoken of the solutions, we've spoken of incentives. How do you put value on this donation action? We really work to explain the gesture, why you do this. So you have to show the customer that we want to collect more. We collect what people bring back to the stores in terms of used clothing. So you need to explain, you have to be transparent on why you do this. This is how the incentive is working today. We're trying to, do a maximum to capture people's attention. And there's this whole work of exchanging with the customer, explaining why we do this, showing them that it's not for advertising purposes. It's to show that we are capable of finding solutions to these problems.
Merci Sophie. Antoine Guillou,
Thank you,
avec la
Sophie.
mairie de Paris.
Antoine,
On voit qu'il y a beaucoup de
With the
sensibilisation. Il faut accompagner.
Paris
On voit, il faut
City
accompagner les
Hall,
clients,
we
les
see there are a
consommateurs, les gens
lot
dans la
of
rue, pour leur montrer tout ça.
solutions. How do you show
Oui, la
the
sensibilisation, c'est clé, on en
consumer
parlait. Moi, je pense qu'il y a,
the
il y a
importance of
deux,
this?
il y a
I
deux
think
éléments fondamentaux.
awareness
Un,
is extremely
expliquer
important.
qu'il
Two
faut pas seulement
fundamental
donner ce qui est en bon
elements.
état, il faut
First of all,
aussi
what we need to
jeter,
explain
déposer ce
is
qui peut être
that
recyclé. Et
you
ça,
don't have
finalement,
to,
le
you
textile
have
est
to
un peu
obviously give what can be
paradoxalement
recycled.
l'héritier, effectivement.
And
C'est un des flux qui avait l'habitude d'être
this is
donné
one
avec
of the flows that
ce geste solidaire. Et en
traditionally
fait,
was given
du coup,
in a
la
gesture
filière
of
est un peu finalement,
solidarity,
contrairement à
you know,
d'autres
the
beaucoup plus récents, je pense au
reuse
déchet alimentaire, on les donne
of
rarement par
clothing
solidarité,
in
mais on les
good
donne beaucoup
condition.
par geste
And
écologique.
we
Donc il faut
saw
qu'on arrive
that this,
à
we now have
sensibiliser
to
sur ce point-là.
understand
C'est très
people that
important.
this is
Et
also
vous
an
évoquez les solutions.
ecological
On travaille beaucoup évidemment
gesture.
avec
You've spoken of
Refashion sur le maillage
solutions. With
de collecte.
Refashion,
On a
we
historiquement
try
des
to
bornes dans
better
l'espace public. Il y en a près
organize
de 250 à Paris.
the
Ce qu'on a commencé à
network
tester, c'est
of
aussi des bornes dans les
collection
équipements
points.
publics pour faire en
Now,
sorte
in
que ça
public
nous évite potentiellement à certains
buildings,
endroits de
etc., we're
vandalisme, de
also
propreté, qui
trying
sont
to
effectivement un
install
sujet très
these
important pour nous.
collection
Et ça
banks. This
permet
is a very
de
important
placer les bornes de
subject for
collecte
us.
sur le
But what
chemin
we can
quotidien, ou
do
en tout
is
cas régulier,
place
des
these
Parisiennes et des Parisiens. Si vous voyez
collection
une borne dans un équipement public où vous
bins
allez régulièrement, vous allez
in
peut-être pas amener vos
areas
vêtements la première
where
fois, mais au bout d'un
they
moment, à force de
go
l'avoir, vous allez
by
finir par vous dire, bon, ben, à quoi
regularly,
sert cette
whether they're
borne
going to work or whatever.
et finalement, ben,
And,
voilà,
you
ça
know,
peut
make
amener
people
ce questionnement.
understand
Est-ce qu'on
what
a
these
testé
bins
dans
are
plusieurs
for.
équipements, dans des mairies d'arrondissement,
We've
dans les centres
tested
d'animation, dans
these
des gymnases,
equipment
c'est de
in
mettre des bornes de collecte non seulement de textiles, mais aussi
gymnasiums,
d'autres types
for
de déchets audiovisuels, des
example,
jouets,
in
du sport,
public
etc. Donc en fait,
buildings as
l'idée c'est
well,
finalement
the
de créer des nouveaux réflexes sur la façon de recycler. C'est même prétexte
municipal
notamment de donner,
offices,
recycler aussi
things
pour ces
like that.
filières-là.
And
Et
it's
donc
not
on a
just
essayé
textile
voilà, on essaie de
recycling
créer des
bins. We've
nouveaux
put
réflexes
different types
en
of bins
réfléchissant à
to
des nouvelles
create a kind
stratégies
of movement,
de
an
collecte,
impetus.
d'implication
And we've
des citoyens. Voilà, donc
reflected
je pense
on
qu'en
these
sur
strategies
ces deux
for
piliers-là, on peut déjà
collection.
avancer très
And I
significativement.
think that on these
Et des zones
two
de don,
points,
pardon.
we can
C'est ça,
advance
des
considerably.
zones de dons
So
ou
you have
de
these
dépôt
areas where
avec des
people
points de
can
collecte. Ça,
donate their
c'est pas mal.
textiles. Yeah.
Petite question vacharde, c'est la question de fin.
A
C'est la question pas
question
prévue. Il
here.
va y avoir un buzzer là,
So
une
a
lumière.
question
Non, mais c'est le mot de la fin.
to
Vous avez un mot
close
de la
on,
fin, chacun.
perhaps. Do
C'est
you
quoi
each
votre mot de la
have
fin,
a
Inès?
concluding word here?
Mot de la fin.
Inès.
Pour
Well,
renvoyer ou une ultime solution.
or
La
maybe
11e
an
golden rule.
ultimate solution?
La 11e Golden Rule.
The 11th golden rule, perhaps?
Moi, j'aime bien
I
l'idée
like the
d'une opération
idea
sur les chaussettes trouées, les baskets défoncées,
organizing, like, for
que ce soit
example,
super chouette.
a
Mais
special
d'arriver
operation to collect
à mobiliser les gens,
socks
je
that
pense
have
que
holes in
même le
them,
sucre qui recycle au
or
final, à la
things
ligne,
like that.
finit
You
à la
know,
poubelle.
rather than making things end up in the garbage
J'ajoute
can.
2 mots sur notre expérience à ce sujet,
I have
transparence et collaboration.
our own experience on this subject, which
Les
is
deux mots de la fin, évidemment.
cooperation
Transparence, je
and
le reprends juste à côté, je ne m'étends
transparency.
pas, mais je pense que c'est crucial.
Now,
Et l'autre point, c'est
transparency
voilà,
is
il faut quand même qu'on
extremely
s'interroge, là, on a
important.
parlé de la collecte
But the
à grande
other
échelle,
point we
faut qu'on
need to
s'interroge quand même
mention
sur
is
tout le volume
not
qui arrive
just the
sur le marché et le
collection,
niveau
but the
de qualité.
volume
Et je crois qu'on a
of
une évolution dans le
textiles
secteur
in
du
the
textile.
market.
Je
In
ne sais
the
pas si Nathalie sera
textile
avec nous dans la
sector,
salle,
you
j'imagine,
have
mais il y a
a lot of players here in the
tendance qui est
room.
extrêmement
There's a
préoccupante
trend
avec des
which
vêtements
is very
très faible qualité.
worrisome.
Et donc, et ça,
You know,
c'est
the
absolument
clothing at
catastrophique. Et
very
donc,
low
ça veut dire
prices,
qu'il faut, je pense,
which
aller
are
beaucoup
a
plus loin dans la
catastrophe, you know, for
réglementation, dans
the
les
textile
éco-contributions, pour
sector.
faire en sorte qu'on
We
dissuade
have to go further
effectivement
in terms of
fortement
eco
la production de ces articles
contributions
qui ont une très forte,
to
qui ont une très faible qualité, parce
dissuade
que
people
sinon on va être
from
absolument
producing
submergé, on est
these
étouffé déjà,
low-priced
embêté
articles
dans
with a
beaucoup
very
d'étapes de la
short
chaîne de collecte par
lifespan,
ces textiles de très faible
because
qualité,
otherwise
qui en
we're
réalité
going
déchets
to
presque avant même d'être déposés.
Inès,
flood
vous nous faites une transition pour le
the
temps suivant.
collection
On va vraiment
chain.
aborder ces
Well,
sujets-là.
that was a
Merci
very
beaucoup
good
d'avoir joué le jeu de la
transition
conversation.
point.
Antoine,
Thank
vous
you
êtes pas
very
bien, merci.
much for your participation here.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Et merci Inès.
Thank you,
On
Inès.
a donc une meilleure compréhension.
So
Moi,
we
j'ai
now have
noté
a
qu'on
better
on a vu pas
understanding
mal de
here.
nouveaux réflexes.
I
Il y
see
a des
that we have
solutions.
new
Le textile
reflexes.
détaché, c'est
There
un
are
boulot.
solutions.
Même chaussette trouée.
We have a problem with the
Le
sound.
sujet suivant, les nouveaux modes de collecte.
The next
Est-ce qu'on a des
subject
exemples en dehors
is
de la
going
filière
to
TLC?
draw
On va ouvrir le cadre
inspiration
et on va
from
ouvrir le cadre avec
sectors
Nathalie Yserd,
other
directrice
than the
générale d'écosystème,
CHF.
Anaïs
We're
Bourbon,
going
responsable
to
développement
have
connectivité d'écosystème,
Nathalie
et Nicolas Furet,
Yserd
directeur de
from
Refashion, qui pourra faire
Ecosystem,
un
Anaïs
CTO.
Bourbon
Jingle.
from Refashion, and Nicolas Furet Furet from Citeo.
Alors, installons-nous.
So let's
Là, on va explorer
take a
des
seat.
approches
We're
innovantes de
going to
transformation. On va
explore different
d'autres liens
approaches
finalement, puis on va
for
voir
the
que il y a des
transformation
problématiques
and
très connues.
innovation in other sectors
On va
which
parler
have
aussi de
faced
fameux
similar
adage, hein, que
problems.
il faut savoir se planter
We
pour pousser,
have
et c'est
to
aussi ce que
remember
vous
that
allez sans
you
doute
need to
nous dire. À
plant
chaque
if you
ligne,
want to
il faut
see things grow.
savoir se planter, quoi, et
So
expérimenter.
we
On
have
va
to
mettre quelques mots-clés comme
experiment
coopération,
here.
transformation,
We're going
engagement
to look
citoyen,
at
traçabilité
keywords
aussi.
like
Et j'ai
cooperation,
envie de démarrer avec vous, Nathalie
transformation.
Yserd. Alors,
With
vous êtes
you,
directrice
Nathalie,
générale
you are
d'écosystème.
Director General of
Je vais divulgacher un peu le
Ecosystem.
propos, mais c'est un peu mon petit
Now I'm
privilège,
going
puisque
to
j'ai la chance
reveal
de pouvoir en
the
parler avec chacun d'entre vous avant.
subject a bit. I have
Vous avez une
the
méthode.
chance of speaking
Et
with
votre
you
méthode, elle tient en
before
trois verbes.
today.
Et
So
ces
you
verbes,
have a
il faut
method
voir,
using
savoir,
verbs
vouloir. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez nous dire à travers ça, à travers cette méthode?
to want, to know, and to be able to. I was listening to the preceding roundtable concerning all the work that needs to be done on the education of the citizen consumer. This is important. Of course, I am Director General of a organization where we deal with all of the electrical systems, everything like refrigerators, lamps, etc., everything that's electrical. And so we are working with a sorting gesture that does not intervene often. People have a tendency to renew their washing machine, their toaster, maybe once every 10 years. So each time you need to think about how you're going to recycle, give your old equipment. And in the surveys that we do among our citizens, there's a very important thing. The first step is to know. That is to say, I want to give a second life to my product or make the recycling of this product. I want to understand how this works. Who do I contact? Do I contact the local authorities? Are there any organizations, NGOs, associations, etc.? So the first thing is to know what to do, where to find the information. Then you have to want to act. I have a washing machine, 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters, weighs 100 kilos or so. I can't just put it in a bag and take it somewhere. So that's a problem. Or maybe a lamp, a battery, a bulb. I know there are collection sites. I know that if I make the effort, I can take it. The temptation is to simply put it in the garbage and I don't have to go anywhere. So the second important verb is to want to accompany the citizen in the effort he has to make to, you know, do away with this product, to have the gesture, the useful gesture. The third verb, after knowing and wanting, there's the question is, can I deal with this? I take the example of my dishwasher. How do I dispose of it? I live in a city, Paris, Nice, etc. I can't go to a disposal site. So what do I do? You have obstacles which give us an opportunity to communicate with our citizen consumer, but each time we need to find solutions to the word verb know how, want to, and can facilitate things for them. So we looked at at ecosystem. We tried to see how in the metropolitan area, there are collection performances which are not as good as in other areas. In Paris, Lyon, Marseille, the performance of this collection is 2.5 kilos per inhabitant for household appliances, electrical equipment, 2.5 kilos per inhabitant. If I go to a small town in the Lot, for example, it's 14 kilos per consumer because they have solutions, mobility solutions, etc. So we asked ourselves how in large cities we could improve on the collection rate, include the kilos collected, because there is a great feedstock available here in this population in urban areas. So we invented two solutions. One for the large household appliance called I Give My Household Appliance. For the last 2 years in Paris, we have implemented, as well as in the PACA region, a solution whereby on the internet site, I make an appointment. I say, I need to have such and such appliance collected. An ecosystem will come to your home to recover that equipment. And so it's a bit like Autolib, the car sharing system, whereby I make an appointment to have the appliance collected. This calls for two things. First, an operation with the local authorities. We are going to, you have a situation where people will have waste objects placed on the street, on the curbside, calling the city to arrange for their collection. Now, when you have demand requests, if it's a household appliance, let us know, and we will collect the household appliance. So, since the service was created 2 years ago, 107,000 household appliances were collected, and this is able to work with the circular economy as well. Thank you, Nathalie. We'll come back to this in a minute. Nicolas, at CTO, you also work on performance here. Can you tell us about the approaches you have attempted and the impact achieved for those that are of interest to you?
So just to give you a couple of words about CTO. So we particularly deal in packaging, amongst other things. So we have the yellow bin. How can we get more performance from the yellow bin in terms of collection? Yeah, you've seen this is it's about reducing first of all. So how can you get rid of the packaging, and then how can we develop the reuse of this, and then how can we develop recycling and sorting gestures? So it's a very big challenge. And we've done a lot of work in terms of awareness raising on these citizen gestures. So the first citizen gesture recognized by French people, this isn't enough so that we can reach the right levels of performance, so the levels of performance set at for France or at European level. So we looked at some other systems in order to mobilize citizens around sorting, and also giving them instructions, for example, and also adding value to their sorting gestures. And this system has been set up in a certain number of European countries, but it can be applied to reuse items. So you take back the packaging so that it can be reused for the same function, or it can be used one time. So you take back your plastic bottle, your can, for etc., and it will be recycled. So when you buy these items, you have to pay a bit more for them. So you have to pay monetary terms, and this will be reimbursed when you take your packaging back. So you can see that there are some results which are very important in terms of Europe. In Germany, for example, they have return rates of over 90%. So when they have this kind of systems put in place. But of course, the monetary value has to be sufficiently high so that it can motivate people to do it. And at the same time, it mustn't have an impact on consumption, on the financial capacity of households. So it's a bit of a balancing act. So in terms of reuse, we're thinking like Nathalie about this. We're thinking about, we have difficulties in terms of the obstacles that we're creating and constraints that we're creating for citizens. So, for example, putting your packaging in a yellow bin, it's a bit complicated, but taking your packaging back to a store, this is even more complicated because you have to go out, you have to take it, etc., etc. So, and if it's glass packaging, that's heavy. So we're looking at some of the different systems like reverse logistics, how they can help the citizen. So reverse logistics, what's that then? It's a distribution system where your shopping is delivered at home, and then you can retrieve the packaging at the same time, at the time when you are delivered for the next delivery. So there's still an issue of storing things in your house, your flat, but at least we have taken away this chore of taking the packaging back to the store. So there's this kind of system helping to remove the technical social constraints and increasing motivation through monetary means, through little bonuses, if you like, which will allow people to take the last steps and which will allow us to reach much greater performance. In terms of these voluntary gestures today, we're at 70% or 75% for recycling for bottles, no, for bottles 70%, but we could reach 75% if we, give people money for bringing back their packaging. So we're in a sector where we're looking for the last part of the recycling chain. And if we don't have this loop, so with a very good rate of reuse, then we're not going to have an impact on the environment. And also also it's important. So performance then is a really key issue for our sector. Another video then, and then we're going to talk about cooperation, awareness raising, etc. So what would motivate you to better sort your clothes? Well, they need to make it a bit more fun. So I think it's a bit boring, personally speaking. So what type of material is my cloth wagon? And to know that these are going to be really used instead of being sent to the other side of the planet. So I'm very motivated to give my clothes because I feel really sad when I see these very needy people. Do you have any ideas in terms of fun ways of making people to do more sorting at school? Set up a kind of sorting obligation in terms of your bins. Well, the level of the town hall, they can put sorting stations at outside major shops. So I work on Instagram and the social networks instead of. So people are very much geared up to the consumer society, so we have to change that. So they want us to change collection points, put this inside the company, these collection points. So in terms of your work, your school, do you have any collection points? Well, it would be a good idea to put this in a school or in the headquarters. It would be very simple. When I go to work, then I could drop off my clothes. So I think I would do that much more regularly if that were the case. In my school, we had a clothing bank, and so I think that it's with the clothing shops, they need to be forced to do this kind of collection. So I think it would be a good idea to create some challenges in schools for collecting used clothing. Thank you very much to the Refashion team who made this video. So Anaïs Bourbon. So can you talk a bit about systems that you put in place, like the challenge for fashion. You really work with young people, I believe. So basically, we look at all those systems which will allow collection to increase. So we've seen some very interesting ideas and online solutions. So the instructions, reverse logistics. So we particularly deal with young people, and we set up challenges in schools. So a couple of years now, we've been organizing these textile races. So these are competitions to collect clothes in schools. And this is a project that we copied from the Netherlands. And we thought there was a very interesting way of sensitizing people. Talking about circular economy and other things, and also creating the right gestures and right consumption in terms of textiles. And the results are quite encouraging. Yes, I would say that they're quite encouraging. This is why we continue to do this. So we've organized several of these competitions, several textile races. So when we go to the schools, we organize a project over 4 or 6 weeks in general. And during that period, we set up these challenges for the students. We ask them to collect as many used items as possible. So, and if they collect these items, they get some points. And so we count the points after 4 or 6 weeks, and the person who has the most points will receive reward. So this is what we've set up. And what's important is that the textile races is not just about collection, it's also about awareness raising, because what we're interested in is to go into schools, of course, to talk about sorting. That is one of our priority objectives, but also we want to talk about responsible consumption, reparation. So we suggest challenges around these different themes. So if they repair their items and they get points, for example. So this allows the children to discover all the different challenges of the sector and to raise awareness on collection. Thank you, Anaïs. So we can see that the role of cooperation is very important as you work with the schools, the teachers, etc., also with local authorities. Yes. So I talked about the textile races in primary schools. So this is for kids of 8 to 11, but we also organize these at high school. We're organizing the textile race for the high schools. So we did this with the Île-de-France region. And this requires a lot of different partners, a lot of cooperation in order to set up this kind of project. Of course, we've got the local authorities and the territories who help us to find the right establishments. And for the textile race, we did something which was very good in Lefebvre. We collected 30,000 tons in a week. So this is one of the records. So we're told to go to a certain area because we don't have enough clothing banks. So we need the local authorities so that we can identify establishments. Also, we identify the moderators. So these are facilitators, if you like, in terms of collective intelligence. They go to school to talk about the project to the kids. And so we don't do it from the office. We actually go onto the ground and tell people how things are going to play out. And we work with the collectors as well. That's key. You can't have a collection project without a collector. And then we talk about sorting after that, which is very important. And also we have the families on board and also the education community. So all these different school projects are really carried out by the teachers and the staff. So they create a link and they really embody the project. So this goes back to what Isabelle said. So these are leaders, if you like. And these are the people who bring other people on board with your help, of course. In terms of cooperation, lots to say on that, Nathalie. So when we talked about this before, there was an operation which really stuck in my head. Giving your telephone. So that's not easy to do that because you've got your data, you've got your photos on there, but you have illustrated a type of cooperation. So tell us about it. Well, still in terms of this issue of collection rates. So we know that smartphones, this is a rather specific object. And this is something that we focus on. We all have a lot of these things at home. It depends on some very simple issues. Like, you might be able to use it. I've got lots of memories, contacts, photos on this phone. So I understand the need as a citizen to make a gesture for the environment and to give give a second life to this phone, or to be able to recycle it and take out the critical precious metals from these smartphones, so reduce the pressure on natural resources. But we have to kind of get over this obstacle, this blocking point, if you like, because people say, okay, well, I don't want to leave this in a store. I don't want to leave it at the landfill. I don't know anybody who does that, by the way. I don't know any. So this is a kind of teaser that you're launching. So what's the solution then? So we said, well, we have to deal with that. We reflected on a very simple tool. So I give my phone to those places that have a partnership solution. So we've got a structure that we work with Emmaüs, and we work with this structure. We make this available to the citizens. There's a website for this, and you download a prepaid sticker. You put your phone in an envelope, put the sticker on, and then you put it in a letterbox. And then what happens? So your envelope arrives on site, and so your smartphone will be retrieved on site. So you will get some information to say that we've received your smartphone, and these are the operations that we're going to carry out. So the guarantee of that all your personal data will be deleted, and you can know what happens to your telephone, because your telephone can have a second life, and it can be sold in SSE stores, for example, where it'd be sold at a low price, or perhaps it's too damaged, too old, for example. In that case, it will be recycled, and it will help to produce some materials that can produce other phones. So you have this kind of traceability, and something else which is very important, you have the information on what happens to your phone and also your personal data. Once again, a question of trust, yes. Nicolas. So in terms of cooperation, so you work with scientists, but you also work with local authorities. So I wanted you to talk about this in 2 minutes. So it's a huge chunk, but is that okay? Well, we can try. So cooperation with scientists, this is a way of learning, developing knowledge, anticipating solutions for the future. So that's very important to have this kind of innovation approach in order to come up with solutions. And that, so we need scientific solutions for technical issues, but also it's scientific in terms of the behavior. So we need science to understand the consumer, the citizens, because in terms of reuse, this is still about consumption, but in terms of sorting, this is about a kind of citizen-based gesture. So we need to design our solutions in order to deal with the constraints of each person. Now, in terms of the local authorities, our relation with them, so these are the players on the ground, so they know what is happening on the ground, they have the best solutions to propose, and which are often based on knowledge and reality. But this is very different from one region to another. So in a rural area, for example, or in a metropole, the issue of sorting or reuse is not the same reality. So we have to be able to adapt our solutions to the territory, to the region. I talked about behavioral science just a moment ago. A young person, a student, doesn't have the same constraints if he lives in a studio than an elderly person who lives in a house of about 100 square meters. So the issue of space, transport. So the consumption place is important. So do I consume outside the house or in the house? Have I got time? Don't I have time? Have I got the financial means? Am I in a stable position? So all these different factors then. So the more knowledge we have on this and the more collaboration we have, the more we can come up with individual solutions which will allow us to reach performance. Thank you, Nicolas, and thank you for picking up the challenge. Anaïs, so we have a couple of questions. What about the rewards for schools in terms of the textile race? Well, often for the schools, it's about excursions, sort of the 3 batches, and in the first winners, there's an excursion nearby. So we adapt in terms of what the educational community proposes as well. We can have books on zero waste, that kind of thing. And then for the challenges for Refashion, we're experimenting with high schools, and there is a real challenge there because we need lots of rewards to motivate people. So we've noticed that what they really liked was to be able to touch things. So we have customization workshops to personalize sneakers, and also repair workshops. And also sewing classes, books as well. So how to deal with these used goods. But you don't give money. But no, we try to stick to the link of the project and make people responsible. Okay. So if we see a skip that's kind of overflowing, what do I do? Well, if I see a bin which is overflowing, I have to report this on the Refashion site. And we have a mapping, a map of all the different textile points. So you put in the postal code, and then you have to report this. And you can do it in a couple of clicks, basically. So we've got somebody, so you who are watching us remotely, and you reminded us that you can put a lot of things in the clothing bags, but you can't put wet linen in there. So that's always a good point, a good idea to point that out. So Nathalie, so talking about cooperation, I'd like you to comment on this and tell us why you sent us this photo. Well, I sent this photo because I think that it's very informative in terms of cooperation. So we're in a lay-by on a highway. So this is a kind of a legal chain. So you've got fridges here, and often these are stolen, or they're retrieved from the pavement, or they're from other different circuits, which are not particularly virtuous. And then they're exported, and through illegal channels, and so or sometimes they can be used for financial traffic. So you can see that in terms of these vehicles, you have these bales of textiles, of clothes, and this is where we can cooperate as well between sectors, because we can see this. We all have the same kind of traffic going on. This is organized in Europe, and then in terms of cooperation, we work with the local authorities so that we can accompany them and prevent this type of theft. So we report things so that we can break down these different networks. We work with the authorities for cooperation. So the central office for public health and the environment, so that we can dismantle these networks. Sometimes it concerns waste. We have to make sure that the waste is treated properly in France, or it can be reused. We need to try and preserve jobs in France and but also think about the territory. So this is the kind of cooperation that we do. So it's so if we were all to get around a table, so there's one sector, but there's lots of different sectors as well, can work against these illegal flows. Thank you very much for participating in this session. Thank you. Thank you very much. So just to remind you that collecting, sorting, these are fundamental gestures for the circular economy. We saw that the current situation requires us to rethink things. So all these things, and then we've had some questions. Some questions coming in. So a lot of you have put your questions in the chat. Continue to do that in the second session. Quite a few solutions which require cooperation. But for the moment, it's time to have a break. A quarter of an hour. So it's a kind of very short break. So for those of you listening remotely, the same thing for you. And so those of you listening remotely, don't forget the satisfaction surveys. Thank you.